So translations. Translations literally mean that you're sliding a figure across the plane, across the coordinate plane, either up, down, right, or left. And it kind of looks like this. Say you have a triangle and you either slide it up, down, right, or left. So if we go to the right and then down, it might end up somewhere over here. Say you have a parallelogram. And it might end up maybe down to the left a little. Or you can have a square that gets moved up and to the right. So literally it looks like these shapes have just slid over to a different spot on the coordinate plane. Nothing has been rotated, nothing has been flipped around. They're still in the same orientation, just in a different spot. So let's go ahead and write down that translations are just sliding a figure without rotating or turning them. A transformation in which a figure slides but does not turn. All right. So an example of translations in the coordinate plane. Alright, so translations in the coordinate plane are going to just be figures, but now we'll have vertices with coordinates, and we'll have to see what happens to those. So in general terms, you'll have an x and a y axis. Say you have a triangle, and we're going to translate it maybe to the right and then maybe down, and it ends up here. So you have new coordinates, you'll have your original coordinates and your new coordinates. And that's what's important, because you have your original 3 coordinates here, or the 3 endpoints, or the vertices, and then you have 3 new vertices. And what happens to those vertices is important. So let's take some note on direction. If you're going to go up or to the right, that means you're adding to the vertice. So if you're here on this number and you're moving to the right, you're going to get a larger number. If you're somewhere down here and you're moving up, your coordinate is going to get larger. So we're adding. If you're going to be moving to the left or down, and you take these points to the left, or you take a point down, you're going to be subtracting, because the coordinate digit, or the value of the coordinate, will go lower. And the value of the coordinate will go lower if you go to the left. So those directions are important to keep note of. If you're given a coordinate, x, y, we already know that this is our horizontal, and this one's going to determine our vertical location. So whenever you're going to go forward, that corresponds to the x, and you're going to be adding. If you're being told that you're going to go to the left, that's also a horizontal change, so that's going to be also for the x coordinate, but this time you're subtracting. If it says something like you're going to move up, that is a vertical change, so that is going to change your y coordinate. You're adding. If it says you're going to move down, that also is a vertical change. That's going to affect your y coordinate. So it's important to keep note that forwards is for the x, backwards is for the x. If you're being told you're going up or down, that's going to change your y coordinate. So let's look at an example. A triangle on a graph. say ABC. And I'm going to label the original coordinates. So let's call this one A, B, C. A would be 1, 2, 3 to the left, negative, and 1 up, 1 positive. B coordinate would be -1 to the left and 3 up. And C would be -1 to the left and 1 up. And the directions are going to be to translate triangle ABC, 3 units to the right, and 3 units down. Alright, so that's what we're going to do. Wants to move to the right 3 units and then down 3 units, and we'll have our resulting triangle. Now you can do it by taking each point, 3 units to the right, 1, 2, 3, and then 3 units down, 1, 2, 3. And this will be my new B. In geometry, when we have our original points, we call those the pre-image, and anything that's going to be our new image, we put a prime on there. So this is B prime. B prime is our new image. And now its location is 2, 0. Now that's one way to do it, right? You can look at the point, take each point individually, put it on the graph, and then label the new point. But I'm going to show you some notation where you don't really need to look at the graph, so I can cover this up and I can still get my new coordinates. So to do that, 3 units to the right. I like to write down what I'm going to do in terms of arrows. So I'm going to go 3 to the right, and I'm also going to go 3 units down. Okay, now remember what we wrote up here. If I'm going forward 3 units, I'm going to add 3 to my x coordinate. And if I'm going to be going, hold on, if I'm going to be going down 3 units, then I'm going to be subtracting on my y coordinate. Okay, so that's what we need to remember. Understand how the coordinates work. So 3 to the right means my y is going to get larger by 3. This means that my x is going to get larger by 3, and my y coordinate is going to get decreased because it's going down by 3. So those are going to be my rules. Okay, so my rule is going to be to take your xy that you had originally, and you're going to take the x and add 3. Then you're going to take the y and subtract 3. So -3, now that I know that I'm going to add 3 to the x coordinate, that means this is the x coordinate. So if I add 3 to it, I now have 0. So a prime, the new coordinate, is going to be 0. And then my original y was 1, and I know that the rule says to subtract 3 from it. So if I have 1 minus 3, that gives me -2. And do the same thing with this third point. My x coordinate is -1. My rule says to take the x and add 3. So take -1 and you add 3, and my new c coordinate would be 2. If I have 1 as my original y coordinate, and then my rule says that I'm going to subtract 3 from it, I get -2. So that's how you would get the new points of the translated image, by observing what they ask you to do. 3 units to the right, which means 3 to the right. I put the arrow, and this just because the arrow looks horizontal, it reminds me that it's the x-axis. I'm adding 3. And when it says 3 units down, 3 with an arrow down, looking at the arrow with going down reminds me that that's the y-axis, and I'm out subtracting 3 since it's down. And then that's exactly what you do to the coordinates. So I'm just going to graph them on the graph just to show you that it is actually that triangle in the new position. So C would now is 2, -2. And my new A is 0, -2. And when you connect these points, this is the same exact triangle. It went 3 units to the right and 3 units down. And there you go. So 2 ways of doing translations. Take each point and doing what they ask you to do. You'd have to do that 3 times on a graph. You don't need to do any math, just visually doing it on the graph. If you don't have a graph or you don't want to use a graph, you can read the rules, write them out, and apply those rules to the x coordinate, apply the y rule to the y coordinate, and you will get your new points without even having to put them on the graph. So there you go, both ways, and I hope that makes sense. For a little recap, let's do one more. So what if you don't have the graph, right? And we're just going to give you some coordinates. So given the vertices, of a triangle, (1, -2), 3, -2, and 3, -4. And I just want give the new coordinates after a translation (4 units left and 6 units up. All right, so we don't have an image. All we have are 3 coordinates, which are the vertices of a triangle. And we just want to know what the new coordinates are going to be after we take this triangle, 4 units to the left and 6 units up. So I'm going to go ahead and just read that, and we're going to write it out with the arrows because it visually makes a little better sense. So 4 units to the left, and I'm going to be going 6 units up. That's a good place to start. This reminds me that it's horizontal, so it's the x-axis. And if I'm going to be going to the left, this time I'm going to be subtracting something. And I'm subtracting 4, because it's going to be going 4 spaces to the left. And if I have my 6 units up, that is my vertical coordinate, which is going to be affecting the y. And I'm going to go up, so that means it's going to be adding, because the coordinates are going to get larger by 6 units. So that is actually my rule. So that means my original xy coordinates are going to be transformed into my new translation with new points given these rules. So let's go ahead and list our points that are given. I'm not sure if we should do, yeah, let's just list them across. So on the previous example, I wrote them horizontally, right? I made the list, and then I wrote the new points to the side. This time I'm going to make my list across, and we'll put the new points underneath. I wasn't sure which way would make it look easier, but we'll do this. So we're going to take all of our x coordinates and subtract 4. I take my y coordinate and add 6. And now my new coordinate becomes -3. My new y coordinate becomes 4. And now, again for this point, I'm going to take away 4 from the x coordinate and add 6 to the y coordinate. And now my new coordinate becomes -1, 4. And lastly, my third point, I'm going to do the same rule. Subtract 4 from the x and add 6 to the y coordinate. And my new point is now -1 and 2. So there you go. These are my 3 new coordinates of the new image of that triangle, applying the rules. And there you go. That's translating figures on a coordinate plane.